Welcome back to the workshop, folks. We've got just an incredible disaster going on. The whole house is under renovation. I've got a ton of electrical wiring being done. The basement is completely torn apart. And on top of that, I've got a stupid problem with the main lab machine, which is when that last GPU is in this slot, I cannot get my fingers in there to turn on and off this machine. So, quickly ripped apart the server rack. We're going to put in one of those power buttons that you just saw. It's just a cheap thing off of the Jungle website and basically allows me to extend the power button out to where I can reach it because I cannot get to it. I'll show you guys. So we've got, just a typical plug-in. We've got a big button. Stick it anywhere you want. Turn on and off the machine. It's got a pretty blue LED. Maybe up front, maybe on the rack someplace, it doesn't matter. It's just that when that GPU is in that slot, I cannot reach this power button when I need to. So let's go ahead and take the main machine, clean it all up, and here we go, all put back together. We've got that switch plugged in, about ready to go back into the rack. But there's one more thing I feel like I need to do, which is we need to go ahead and sticker this thing up. Let's put some, AI getting pizza with a llama on there and go for it. There we go. Much better. Much, much better. Now, let's talk about the real topic for today. These mini computers, we've seen these a lot. I run these as master nodes in my different Kubernetes clusters. This is a little Core i5 mobile. Can this thing run AI and LLMs? And welcome back to the lab. As we just talked about, I went ahead and set up this Core i5. Let's take a look. We're going to run it through the Mistral leaderboard test. I assume it will come in last place, but we need to know this for sure. These things are a Core i5, about $350 these days, 32 gigs of DDR4. It's a i5-12450H CPU. It says it's a Windows machine, but not for me. It's running in Ubuntu, and they are actually my Kubernetes master nodes. Let's go ahead and take a look at the specs of that processor. This is a 12th gen mobile i5 12450H. It has 8 cores, 4 performance cores, 4 efficient cores for a total of 12 threads. It can do a max of 4.4 gigahertz. And a max turbo power, basically the TDP, of that processor is about 95 watts. These are great little machines depending on what you're doing with them. I run them as my Kubernetes master nodes because they're nice and cheap, but yet very, very fast. They do have a default of 32 gigs of RAM in them. I think you can get them up to 64. There is newer models that are running DDR5 even, which are great. So let's go ahead and get this set up. We are going to be running this through our typical local AI. It is only going to be using CPU inference on that machine. We are not including the built-in iGPU from Intel on there. We are just going to run it on the CPU to compare it. So let's get this started. We have our static prompt, which is about 101 tokens in this case. We are going to do our typical 20 runs at each of the Q3, Q4, Q5, Q6, Q8, and FP16. Off to the side, on the right top-hand side, that is Prometheus and Grafana. In this case, we're not using any GPUs, so we're just going to watch the metrics of that replica set in there to see how much CPU and memory it's using. On the lower right-hand side, that is just HTOP. So those are more live metrics, whereas the ones above it will lag behind a little bit. And here we go. This is Q3 to start off. Not looking too bad for a mobile i5 processor. Looks like the pod metrics are jumping up to be just below 4 gigabytes, which is about what we would expect for Q3. We are set at 10 threads on this machine just because it is a Kubernetes node, so we're not using it 100% because we also want to leave some headway so that we can get our metrics and run the pods without a problem. Seems to be cruising right along for a mobile i5 processor. We'll wait for this first result, which is about 8.5 tokens per second. Not too shabby. Kick it into fast forward mode. We'll come back here in just a second once this is all done. But we're going to do things a little bit different on this video, and we are literally just going to fast forward through Q3, Q4, Q5, Q6, Q8, and FP16, because in the end, this is about 6 hours probably worth of testing. And you guys aren't going to watch that for a CPU. You barely watch the actual test as it is. So let's go ahead and zip right through all of these tests. I will let you guys get a good example of how each quant feels at the beginning of each one. But we'll cut it short and we'll get you guys back to what you want, which is the reports at the end. So as we go here, this is just gives you a general feel about what Q4 feels like. And let's go ahead and hop over and get going through the whole fast forward motion here. That was the end of Q3. Let's get it all set up for Q4. Here's a good example of what Q4 feels like on this mobile i5. Still cruising right along. Not too shabby at all. Let's go ahead and kick this into fast forward and run through these tests. Alright, and that was the end of Q5. Let's get that report generated, flip it over, get it all set up for Q6, and go right into the Q6 testing. There it starts out. Let's get this cruising. Okay, that was the end of Q6. Let's get this all set up for Q8 so that we can run through this as quickly as possible. Still got FP16 to go after this. And this is Q8 running on that mobile i5. Still not looking too shabby at all. Totally usable for CPU inference, especially if you're backing an application that doesn't need to be responding as fast, or if you guys are just playing around. Don't need to go spend all that money on GPUs, just remember that. Alright, let's kick this into fast forward mode and get through this. And that was the end of Q8. Let's go ahead and get this all set back up for our final test, which is the FP16. And here it goes. So this will give you guys a good feeling of running the full FP16 of Mistral 0.37B on a little tiny mini computer. It's not great. It's not great. I will admit that, especially with the amount of GPUs that we have in the lab. This is pretty slow, but this would still get the job done, and it is fully capable of doing so and could run much larger models even with its default 32 gigs of RAM. Not too shabby. Let's go ahead and kick this into fast forward and come back at the end and gather up all of these results. been a solid day of testing. Let's go ahead and get all of these reports all put together, Q3 through FP16, combine them into one report so that we can go look at the results, and then we'll take the averages of those results at the very end and go throw them on the leaderboard and see where this little mini i5 computer actually lands. If you have guesses, go ahead and put them below. I assume it's going to be in last place under that 9820X that we tested in pure CPU mode. All right, let's go take a look at these actual reports. Go down and find the mini i5 complete. Expand this window out so that you guys can see. And there you go. Let's get that back. Now this is the prompt evaluation time, and as we can see in blue we have the Q3, in orange the Q4, green the Q5, red the Q6, purple the Q8, and brown in FP16. Now this is in milliseconds, right off to the side. So this was the prompt evaluation time. Now let's go take a look at the evaluation time. FP16 up at the top as we would expect. The rest of them kind of grouped in there, but mainly just because of the scale of this map, because that's 5,000 to 15,000 milliseconds. Total time taken is going to be those put together. Prompt tokens evaluated should be 111 across all of our tests. Completion tokens is going to mimic the length of your response. Again, not accuracy, but the length of your response. So you can actually see it was pretty grouped together in all those quants. Total tokens is going to be those two put together. The prompt tokens per second. So you can see that the FP16 and Q8 took a little bit longer to load as we would expect, but they're pretty grouped in there for prompt tokens per second. Now, what everyone's waiting for is the evaluation tokens per second. This is what everyone judges the speed on. As we can see in brown, let me show the averages down here, just make sure, yep, okay. So in brown is the FP16 down at the bottom, hovering at about just 2 tokens per second. The purple, which is the Q8, right, looks like it was hovering at about 3.5 tokens per second, followed by the Q6 in red above that, right at 4 or just below 4 tokens per second, and the Q5 green right with the Q6, and then we have the Q4 and the Q3. Now give me just a second and I will upload the average results from all of these reports to the leaderboard and we'll go check it out. Just a reminder, you can always come see the leaderboard at RoboTF.ai. You can see the reports, everything that we basically do on this channel, just to make sure that you guys can see it well. Let's go ahead and refresh the page now and we'll go see where this little i5 Mini PC actually landed on this board. So looking at the Q3, it actually beat the GTX 1660 just barely at 5.847 tokens per second to 5.1.7. It's still solidly in that place. It is under the Quadro P2000 and that Core i9-9820X, the other CPU we have tested so far. The Q4 board shows much of the same thing. It's actually in 9th place, right above that GTX 1660. We know that GTX 1660 clocked out though, so it's going to fall into last place, I assume. Q5, it is in last place here, but not that far behind the Core i9-9820, amazingly. Not bad at all, not bad at all. Let's go check out the Q6 leaderboard. Much of the same story. About 4 tokens per second to 7 tokens per second on that Core i9. Let's go ahead and flip over and take a look at the Q8 leaderboard. Again, in last place, 3.5 tokens per second. The Core i9 was about 5.8 tokens per second. And FP16, which is kind of a ridiculous test, but hey, look at this. 2.1 tokens per second to 3.3 tokens per second on that Core i9. That's actually pretty darn good for this little mini PC. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this. This was kind of a fun one just to see if the mini PCs could do it. They can. So use it to your knowledge, and remember, buy your AI a pizza. It will really enjoy it. It will make your life better. See you guys next time.